Hello, hello, hello. Yay! I fixed it. I don't know how, but I fixed it.
You're listening to the League of Legends podcast of strategy, innovation, and hosts with great beards. This is
First Blood.
Hello and welcome to First Blood, the League of Legends podcast. I am Alec, and I am joined once again by my co-host Will, aka Senscar. How you doing today, Will?
I'm doing good. Hopefully this recording style will eliminate the hiss that we had in the past couple episodes, but we'll see about it.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of technical problems, hence why this episode is coming out so late. My apologies to everybody. It was all my fault, and I have flogged myself severely for it, so...
You shouldn't say that. There might be children listening to this show.
I'm sorry.
Of course, those children play League of Legends, so I'm sure that this is probably the least horrifying thing they've heard today.
I mean, have you seen Dr. Mundo? But anyway, welcome to our show. So we got a pretty good show for y'all today, if I do say so myself. We're going to start off the show here with our news and notes, and then we're going to go right into our champion review, which this week we're reviewing Zed, the Master of Shadows. And Will, I know you just have so many good and kind and sweet things to say about Zed.
Zed's pretty bad, but we'll get into that.
He is not a fan of Zed. After our champion review, we're going to do our item review, which this week we're going to be talking about Liandry's Torment, which I am very excited about because I'm a big fan of that item. And then we'll get into our CC of the week, and this week we're going to talk about Fear, just to kind of shake things up a little bit. Talk about a form of CC that's a little bit different. So let's get right into it with our news and notes. So, first thing to come out this week was that CLG EU is no more. That's right, you heard it here first, although not really. They did not re-sign their contract with Counterlogic Gaming, the guys over at CLG EU. They will still stay together as a team. However, they're just going to be called something else. While this really doesn't have any kind of real big effect on the pro scene or anything like that, it'll be interesting to see if CLG decides to replace their European team with some other guys, or if they're just gonna, let CLG NA become, Team CLG. So nothing really impactful there as far as gameplay or anything like that, but we could see some interesting things come from this. Does this mean that pro players are getting a little bit more picky with their contracts and stuff like this? Who knows? But we'll see what happens with that. So CLG EU no longer a team. Sad day. The other big thing is that the PBE changes are out on League of Legends now, and these PBE changes are pretty huge to one champion in particular, that being Amumu. There were some small changes to Lee Sin and Blitzcrank, some of their ratios, and Blitzcrank's passive got a little bit of a nerf to the amount of time it takes to activate it. But the big one comes from Amumu. And Amumu's ult, if you recall from listening to our very first episode, we said that Amumu's ult is most likely the best stun in League of Legends. Well, I think Riot listened to us because it is no longer a stun. They have changed Amumu's ult so that it is now a root, which means that anybody that he hits with this ultimate is going to be able to auto-attack and still hit him. And this kind of makes Amumu much worse of a choice, I would say. What would you think about that, Will?
Well, when we originally recorded this, it was, I would have said yes, but since we recorded this, they retracted that, and now Amumu's ult, while it is no longer a stun, it does root and, quote, stop them from attacking, whatever that means.
So basically it means that it's still a stun.
But I feel like it's not really still a stun, because I'm not really sure what you can and can't do when he ults you now, because it's not a stun, and it's a little bit more than a root. So I don't know. I guess I'll just have to literally see him use it to understand what that means.
So that's really weird. So it's like it's not quite a stun, but you still can't do anything like you would be able to during a normal root or a snare or whatever. That is incredibly awkward. So I guess that kind of negates the thing that we were saying of Amumu not being good anymore, if they actually changed it so that he can auto attack. Like does this have any kind of effect on Amumu at all in your mind?
I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if this is actually being rebuffed back up to how good it was before, or if there's still like some nerf hidden within the text of the notes. So
now here's a question.
I don't know.
Can you flash out of a root?
Yeah, that's the main thing that I was wondering. I don't know if you're going to be able to flash out of this, or if you're able to use summoner spells or what. But I guess we'll see.
But you can auto attack. Huh? Interesting. So we'll keep our eye on Amumu and see what happens there. But PBE changes, always coming down, always making things interesting for the game. But real short on our news and notes this week. That's really all I had. And we're going to jump right now to our champion review, which is for Zed, the Master of Shadows. And honestly, like the first time I saw Zed, I was like, what the heck is Riot's, fantasy about having every ninja possible in this game? Because we have yet another ninja in Zed. We already have freaking Akali and Shin and all of these awesome ninjas. I'm just saying, where are my awesome pirates? Because I'm definitely a pirate guy, not a ninja guy.
Well, you have two pirates already. You have Gangplank and you have Misfortune.
But Misfortune is a pirate, ... hunter, not really a pirate. So all I have is Gangplank.
Misfortune's a pirate. Don't even go down this road with me.
All right, fine. I can see. Touche. We're going to talk about Zed real quick. So let's go run down his abilities real quick, and then we'll jump back into them and kind of analyze them and go down them a little bit more deeply. First of all, we have his passive, which is Contempt for the Weak. And that's Zed's basic attacks against targets below 50% health deal 8% of the target's maximum health as bonus magic damage. This effect can only occur once every 10 seconds on the same target. His Q is Razor Shuriken. Zed and his Shadow both throw their spinning blades forward, dealing damage to any targets they pass through. And then additional shurikens that hit the same enemy deal 50% less damage than the previous shuriken. His W is Living Shadow. Zed sends a shadow to dash forward and it remains in place for 4 seconds. And it mimics all of his spells cast. Zed can then reactivate this ability to swap places with his shadow. His E is Shadow Slash. Zed and his shadow both spin their blades, creating a burst of shadow energy. If the shadow hits with its Shadow Slash, it will slow any enemy champion that it hits. And then his ultimate is R is Death Mark. Zed dashes to target champion, projecting a shadow behind them and marking the champion for death. After 3 seconds, the mark will trigger, dealing a percentage of the damage Zed has dealt while the mark was activated. So let's kind of analyze these abilities a little bit more in depthly, Will, and let's start with this passive, which I'm going to go ahead and start by saying this is probably the worst passive. If it's not the worst, it's one of the worst passives in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and the sad part is it has the potential to be so good. Dealing 8% extra bonus magic damage to targets under 50%, that's pretty sweet. But once every 10 seconds on the same target, that really is a very crippling downside.
It's abysmal. I mean, it really is. Like, how often do you think that somebody's just going to stand there when they're below 50% health already and let you beat on them for a total of 20 seconds to activate your passive twice? I mean, that's just, that's terrible. I mean, if you look at how much time in a game 10 seconds really is, it's just an infinite amount of time almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of sad how much time that really is in a game of League of Legends. So for this to only trigger every 10 seconds on the same target, and it's not like you're hitting a bunch of guys at once with Zed. I mean, he doesn't have a ton of area of effect. I mean, his Shadow Slash can be area of effect because he hits anybody that's in that area, but it's not like he's going to always be doing that all the time. So it's not like he's hitting, like the whole team who all have to be below 50% health in order to get this 8% of the target's maximum health as bonus magic damage. I mean, I'm sure it's fine if it's like the last hit or something like that, but Otherwise, it just seems pretty abysmal to me.
Yeah, and the sad part is there's so many ways that they could have made this good. They could have made the effect something like 3 to 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I think that would be fine. They could make it not just basic attacks, but any offensive ability, because that way you could trigger it with your shuriken, which would be good for poking.
Yeah.
You could make it deal a little bit more damage to counteract how long it takes to work on the same target. I mean, there's just so many ways that they could have made this good, but as it stands, it's just pretty bad.
I mean, it would be easy to kind of break this too. Like if they did let it activate like once every 2 seconds or something like that, that would probably be too good. But even if you just cut that time in half to say like once every 5 seconds or 6 seconds, that seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I would say I'd probably like to see that become 4 seconds.
Yeah. That seems reasonable. I mean, that still gives you plenty of time to get away.
I mean, most of the time in this game, you'll die in 5 seconds regardless of what's going on. If it's any kind of a team fight, or if you're being ganked. I mean, the only time where fights last really much longer than 5 seconds anyway is if it's just one person versus one other person.
True. So that's a passive, and we're going to go ahead and move on into his main abilities now. So let's talk about his Q. Well, you know what? Before we talk about his Q, I actually would like to talk about his W first, which is Living Shadow, and that's where Zed sends out his shadow self or whatever to a place where it stands for 4 seconds, and it mimics every spell that he casts. So this is kind of the bread and butter of Zed. Like, this is his gimmick. This is what, makes him unique in ways that, you're getting, in a sense, 2 separate damage sources that mimic the spell that he's casting. So you get 2 Razor Shuriken or you get 2 Shadow Slashes. But in my mind, when I've played Zed and when I've seen Zed played, it feels almost, I don't know, too gimmicky in a way. Or just very, very difficult to get this right. To get the Living Shadow right. What do you think about Living Shadow?
For people who are really good with lining up Lulu's little
Glitter
Lance ability, you'll be really good at working with Living Shadow because it's the same mechanic. Pretty much, you have to be a friggin' trigonometry major though to get a successful Living Shadow Razor Shuriken lined up in the middle of a hectic team fight with people moving around, and it's so difficult to get this ability to work at its optimum, and even when you do, the reward isn't really that great.
No. I mean, it gives you some additional bonus AD, and if you hit him with the Shadow Slash with the Shadow, you get a slow, you get an extra Shuriken, but like additional Shurikens that hit the same enemy champion deal 50% less damage than the previous Shuriken, which, I mean, that's kind of a trend with anybody that has this kind of ability to poke really, really well. Like, the first hit will do a ton, and then the second hit won't do nearly as much. But, I think you're right. Like, and this seems to be just the trend overall with Zed, is that his skill cap is so high, and yet the rewards for, using him correctly don't add up to the skill cap.
Yeah.
Like, the skill cap is just way, way, way too high. Like, if you're not good at placing this Living Shadow, you're just not going to be a good Zed player. Like, he's basically useless without this Living Shadow. Because, I mean, almost everything depends on you being able to get this Shadow right in order to get these quote-unquote rewards for playing him. Like the additional slow and everything like that. So if you're not good at placing this Shadow, Zed is basically just completely worthless to me.
Just to put it in perspective, like, if we're talking about having to jump through hoops in order to make something happen, the effect has to be really strong if you have to do an awkward set of actions to make the effect happen. So, for instance, probably the best person I could think of who has a gimmicky but really powerful setup, almost like a combo attack, is Jace.
Yeah.
Excel Gate into his little Q. If you get hit by that Q, you lose a third to half of your health. And, I mean, that's what Zed needs to have if he's going to, be worth playing when you have people like Jace who can hit you for half your health across the screen.
And not to mention the fact that Jace, like, there's not a whole lot of real difficulty to playing him. I'm not underestimating Jace players. I think guys that play Jace well, it's definitely noticeable as to opposed to the guys that play Jace poorly. But I picked up Jace the first time and raffle stomped with him because I can just roll my head across the keyboard and then roll it back, and it does all of his abilities in perfect sequence, and I get a kill.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you have to set up is the Excel Gate shot, and then after that, you pretty much just press buttons and they die. So
the same cannot be said of Zed. Let's quickly look at his 2 damage abilities, the Razor Shuriken and the Shadow Slash, which, I mean, they're decent abilities on their own. One reason, I guess, to play him is his abilities can clear some creeps. Man, this guy is a creep clearing machine with these 2 abilities. The Razor Shuriken is a really good poke, and it's got some decent damage attached to it, and it can kill you some minions really, really, really quickly. The Shadow Slash, you can jump into the middle of a bunch of minions and hit them all, and it deals some decent damage. So this guy can clear some creeps. However, against enemy champions, not nearly as good. What would you say?
we're talking about Razor Shuriken?
Both of them, Razor Shuriken and the Shadow Slash.
Well, so Shadow Slash really is more of a creep clearing ability. Razor Shuriken, it's decent poke. You know, it has a 1.0 AD ratio, which is pretty good. In fact, it's really good as far as AD ratios go. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you get a little bit ahead and you're good at, you know, throwing a pretty much a linear nuke.
It's the same thing. It's like being able, if you can play Lulu well, you could probably play Zed well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's, or you know, Olaf. It's pretty much the same thing. Throw something forward, it hits everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, if you're really good at poking and you just love throwing things at people and never really engaging them that stridently, then maybe Zed's your champion. But he's just kind of meh to me.
Agreed. But now let's talk about his ultimate, which is where I think Zed we really see the poorness of Zed, and that's in his ultimate, which is the Death Mark. He dashes to a target enemy champion. He hits them and puts a mark on them, and he makes a shadow behind them, and you know, you get, after 3 seconds the mark triggers and it deals a percentage of the damage that Zed dealt while this mark was active. So basically you have an ultimate here which on its own will literally do nothing.
That's right. One of the only offensive ults in the game that does no damage on its own. Basically, if you use this and then die, you will do no damage to them. If you cannot get any damage charged up on this ultimate, you'll deal 0. Like I said, there's lots of things about Zed that can be tweaked in order to make him, you know, maybe not amazing, but playable. And this is certainly one of them. This ability needs to deal damage on its own. Agreed.
Because if you look at any other of these kind of marks in the game, like the one that comes to mind that's probably the most well-known would be Mordekaiser's mark, which is his ultimate, and he puts that mark over somebody, and when they die, he gets that little shadow creature that fights for him or whatever that's a copy of you. That ability does damage over time, and it does a significant amount of damage over time.
And it deals a significant amount of damage up front, and it steals life.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's probably the most well-known of these marks. So why couldn't Zed's mark deal just a little bit of magic damage, at least over time, if not like some damage up front, so that you get some kind of reward from this trigger? Because, I mean, like we were saying earlier, 3 seconds is not a short amount of time. I mean, it's 3 seconds before that mark triggers. Like, it just doesn't do anything. I guess that's why I'm upset about this, is that it just really doesn't do anything. And I don't know if Zed is even playable because of this.
He's certainly, in my opinion, not playable. Your ultimate as an assassin is the thing that you are most reliant upon in order to kill your target. And that is your goal, to kill your target and ideally to get away. But even then, if you have to die in order to kill their highest value target, that's a decent trade.
Yeah, and you want to be super, super bursty as an assassin, too. I mean, if you look at someone like Akali, who just has an extremely powerful burstiness to her. Like, she just jumps in there and she deals a ton of damage really, really, really quickly. And then she may die, but she's taken at least one person down with her every time. Zed, I don't see it. Like, whenever I see him jump in on somebody, pretty much if he jumps in on the wrong person, the entire team just collapses on him and nothing happens. He doesn't take anybody down with him, which is, I think, the mark of just a bad assassin character.
The mark. I get it.
I hate you. Okay, so...
I get it. For any of you who
I see what you did there.
DBZ Abridged.
If you don't, then you should. I'm just saying. If you're as nerdy as we are, go on YouTube and watch DBZ Abridged.
So that's our little plug for Team 4-Star.
Shout out to Team 4-Star.
Checks payable to First Blood Podcast.
Please, because those guys are making bank, and I want some of their money.
They're making bank because they have T-shirts, though. Maybe we should have T-shirts.
Would any of you buy a T-shirt from us? Like, email me. Let me know if you would buy a T-shirt from me.
I'd buy a T-shirt from you.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Seems a bit self-serving, though.
Yeah, incredibly. And you just become your own walking billboard, and I'm done with this. So, let's say that... Well, okay, let's take a look at Zed as far as a laning champion. Like, would you... Where would you put Zed on your team? Because, you know, for the most part, when you first look at him, he seems to be a laning champion. But the high elo play that I have seen coming out of Zed, especially out of a lot of the Korean teams, have been running Zed in the jungle. And, you know, it's very interesting to see Zed in the jungle, and you know, sometimes he's actually done pretty well in the jungle. So, is Zed in the jungle? Maybe the jungle is where Zed's supposed to be, or do you think he's supposed to be in a lane?
I mean, his clear times are gonna be phenomenally fast in the jungle. He doesn't have any natural sustain, really, but with the amount of damage he can front load onto minions and stuff, since he doesn't have to have an awkward setup, since they just sort of stand there, unlike a champion.
True.
He can set his shadow clone up and just pretty much blast through them before they can really deal any damage. So his clear times are fine, but honestly, if you're going to run Zed at all, I think you'd probably just run him mid.
Yeah.
He's got really good poke. He'll be able to, you know, potentially bully certain champions out of lane completely. I think he's too squishy top, as he's especially going to get outclassed once everyone hits 6. Can you imagine Zed facing like Darius or Garen top?
Actually, I would love to see that if I was the guy playing Darius.
Yeah, like someone who has a real execute versus Zed's just god-awful wannabe execute. So yeah, I think you run Zed mid. I think you just try to be aggressive and try to make them farm under their tower so that they lose their creep score. Maybe get a few kills if they just are stupid. But
yeah, I would kind of agree with that, because I did actually go ahead and try Zed in the jungle, and his ganks are just awkward, because you really want to land that slow, which means you really have to position, like we said before, you really have to know how to position that shadow perfectly. Because if you don't land that slow, then he literally has no CC at all, and that just makes his gank terribly awkward. You know, I just don't see it. I know that people have played it to success, but I just don't see it.
There's so many better jungles, like Kha'Zix,
Oh,
Rengar, Jax, Maokai, Shaco. I mean, remember when people used to ban Shaco all the time?
Yes, I do.
I'll still take Shaco over this guy. Lee Sin. I mean, really.
Arguably the best jungler in the game, and he has, you know, everything you want in a jungler. You know, he's got a very, very fast clear time. He's got really, really good ganks, and he has really decent CC. Zed does not. Not even close.
Yep.
He has really, really fast clear times, but that doesn't make him a good jungler.
So if you're gonna play Zed, play him because you like him, and that's fine. If you just love the idea of playing Shredder in League of Legends,
He does. Oh my god! I opened up the first time I saw it, and I think you were the one who said it as well. we were looking for the Ninja Turtles to come bouncing out. And I want, Riot, I'm saying it right now, I want a Shredder Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle themed skin for Zed.
So if Shredder is Zed, then does that make Splinter Twitch?
I don't want to think about that.
I don't. Anyway, moving on. So if you like Zed, play him. He's not absolutely horrible. I mean, his abilities are just awkward and weird. But if you're good with him, you'll do fine, I guess. But truthfully, your time would be better spent on better champions.
Agreed. So let's say that, somebody's listening to us and they say, screw you guys, I'm never going to take any of your advice on champions, and I'm going to play Zed and only Zed for 1,500 games. What would be an optimal build for Zed? Like, what are we looking at if somebody just desperately wants to play Zed? How would we build him?
Well, here's why. I just mentioned that he was a poorly built champion, and here's why. His ultimate requires him to live long enough to deal damage, but his ratios are really high. So if he builds tanky, he can't really do any damage, but he needs to be tanky in order to deal damage. So you have to build him sort of in a weird hybrid fashion. Black Cleaver, Trinity Force, definitely. I mean, you definitely want those items on him for sure. You probably are going to want to build like a Sunfire Cape because you have armor and health.
Yeah.
So that'll be really helpful for him. Whatever boots are good, probably Merc Treads. Just
I would say for the most part, you probably want defensive boots.
Yeah, like the tenacity will help him to not get crowd controlled. So probably Merc Treads would be good. So we're looking at Merc Treads, Black Cleaver, Trinity Force, Sunfire Cape, maybe a Frozen Heart if no one else has built one. And if you're winning, go offensive. If you're losing, go defensive on that sixth item.
Well, and I'm going to throw out an option here for the sixth item because I think this item is actually pretty critical on Zed, is a Frozen Mallet. And the reason why I say that is because of his ultimate. If you're going to go ahead and jump onto one guy and focus him down as quickly as possible, you're going to need to stick on that guy. And so the Frozen Mallet is going to give you the extra slows that you need in order to stick on the guy to deal enough damage to get that mark to trigger and to actually make him worthwhile to use that ultimate. Because otherwise, I just don't ever want to dash in as Zed if the guy that I'm hitting is just going to be able to get away. So I'm thinking that the Frozen Mallet is pretty critical on Zed, just for the extra slow.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that actually is going to be pretty ideal for him. So.
Yeah, so get a Frozen Mallet, get some extra slow in there, and that's how you want to build Zed. Kind of just, tanky bruiser. Just go tanky bruiser with him all the way. Do we expect to really see anything out of Zed in Season 3?
I hope not. I mean, if we do, maybe there's something about him that I'm not seeing.
Yeah,
but
maybe we're just stupid.
But we were right about a Moo, so let's just have faith in our own analytical abilities and just say, probably if you just stack him up to any of the champions that have come out recently, like Kha'Zix and Rengar and Jace, he's just not even remotely nearly as good as any of them.
Agreed. Alright, so that's Zed, the Master of Shadows. We don't have nice things to say about him, but, if you really want to, pick this guy up, give him a shot. If we missed something and you found, just the way that makes Zed the best champion in the game, pop us over an email at firstbloodpodcast@gmail.com and let us know how you play Zed so I can play him too and like him, because I really do want to like him, but I just can't. So that's Zed, and we're going to move on now to our item review, which this week we're talking about Liandry's Torment. And I have to say that I am so excited to talk about this item because it is probably my new favorite item in Season 3. I love me a Liandry's Torment, and that's basically just because I like spellcasters that deal damage over time, and Liandry's Torment makes those kind of casters just, so scary. Liandry's Torment, you build it from a Haunting Guise and an Amplifying Tome. It gives you plus 70 ability power, plus 200 health. It has 2 unique passives on it, plus 15 magic penetration. And the second unique passive is that dealing spell damage burns enemies for 5% of their current health as magic damage for 3 seconds. If their movement speed is impaired, they take double damage from this effect. And that just plays right into the cards of my favorite top lane, Singed. I think that this item makes Singed viable once again, who played at even the high elo. Because this is just everything Singed wants. It gives him the extra ability power, which makes his poison scary. It gives him health, which makes him tanky, which is what he wants. The extra magic penetration, and then this other passive where he gets to burn people every time he deals spell damage, and if he's constantly dealing spell damage with his poison, they're just going to burn for days. And he likes to slow people a lot. Pretty much, they're going to take 10% of their current health as magic damage over 3 seconds every time they get hit by one of his poisons. I mean, that just seems unbeatable to me. What do you think about Liandry's Torment?
Man, this item is ridiculous. Like, the only thing that it doesn't have that you want, and the only thing that really makes this item even remotely balanced at all, is that it does not have any mana or cooldown reduction on it. And thank God for that, because, good God, this item is good.
Yeah.
I mean, on Singed, obviously you build this every time. Doesn't matter what they have, you just build this item. And there's half a dozen other champions that, just deal constant magic damage. Swain, Cassiopeia, just anybody who can just throw down bad or can land a damage over time spell. So I'm thinking like Malzahar, obviously Mordekaiser with his 10-second damage over time spell.
Like, this makes Mordekaiser's damage over time spell pretty much just, I point, I click, you die.
Yeah, I mean, really, like, you're looking at taking a nice chunk of health just from the ability itself, and then you're going to take another 25% of your health just from Liandry's Torment, not to mention the damage over time from the ability itself. And then if he has a Rylai's, then you're going to be looking at 50% of your health from Liandry's Torment alone.
Which is just terrifying. I mean, that's just terrifying. And not to mention that it says on the passive, it's just dealing spell damage. Like, it doesn't even say, dealing damage over time burns enemies, or dealing, your basic attacks or whatever. No, it's just dealing spell damage. So, like, lately, I've even seen Liandry's Torment popping up on people that don't deal damage over time. Like, I gotta say, a Liandry's Torment on an Evelynn is kind of scary. Because she just jumps in, she bursts a ton, she deals a ton of spell damage, and then she wants to get out really quickly. And then you just burn. You burn, and then you die.
I mean, maybe it's not like a damage over time spell, but it certainly feels like one when you're getting hate spiked every 2 seconds.
And then if you add an additional burn of 5% of your current health, that's terrifying. Oh my gosh. It just makes an AP caster, like, really scary. Because everybody's going to get a health plug from this too, so everybody's going to get tanky. Every champion that you put this on is going to get super tanky and super scary, and I just can't say anything else really good about this item. It's amazing.
Can you imagine this on Vlad?
Yes. I think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, like, since he already benefits from health anyway, and from ability power anyway, and he certainly throws out spells pretty fast, one after the other, this would be a fantastic item on Vlad. You could actually probably build this as your first item on Vlad.
And on Vlad, I would say yes. However, I don't think I want to rush Liandry's Torment on too many champions. And the reason why is what you said a little bit earlier, is that it doesn't have a mana. It doesn't give you any kind of buff to your mana.
Right.
So anybody that you're going to play this on, this is probably like your second, maybe even your third big item. Definitely on, like, I'm going to use Singed as an example again. When I'm playing Singed, of course, my end goal is to have Liandry's Torment. But I'm going to rush, like, a Rod of Ages or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, or if I'm playing Morgana, I'm going to get, like, a Tear of the Goddess or something before I get Liandry's Torment. Because you need that additional mana, and if you're just getting health and ability power and no mana, you're just not going to be able to even really do anything.
I'd probably still get Rod of Ages first on Morgana.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe Seraph's Embrace afterwards.
Which is an item that we will talk about eventually, because that's another really, really good one. But I'm excited because this kind of makes those damage over time champions maybe viable again at high elo. Because, like, I have an affection for Malzahar because he was, like, one of my first champions that I ever, like, bought and paid for. And then I was really sad because everybody's like, oh, you got Malzahar? Oh, he sucks. But now, suddenly, you know, I put a Liandry's Torment on him, and suddenly he's good again. So does this make those damage over time champions that maybe weren't so good in the past suddenly maybe viable?
I mean, there were certain damage over time champions that were viable, but that's because they could be extremely tanky, so they survived long enough to do their damage.
I'm talking about, like, the glass cannon
right.
damage over time guys, like Malzahar, and I'm trying to think of another one, but Malzahar is the one that...
Brand.
Yeah, Brand.
Well, I think this item really splits the AP roll down the middle from grind you with damage over time types, like everyone we mentioned before, and then you have the really, really bursty types. And I don't really know if the bursty types have room for an item like this. I still think that those kinds of champions still are probably going to go, with the usual Death Cap, Abyssal Scepter style build. Mm-hmm. But this at least gives you an option to get a little tankier and to play the game a different way with a champion that you're used to building the same 6 items every single time.
Like, I think on certain of the bursties, they probably want this. Like, I think probably someone like Evelyn wants this.
Yeah, I could see Evelyn wanting this.
Because, like, her whole goal is to, like, burst, and then I gotta get out really quickly because if I stand here, I'm so squishy that one hit and I'm dead. So, like, this just gives you that extra bit of, I get to burst, and then get out a little bit sooner because I know that this is going to burn them down the rest of the way and they're going to die.
And if you build most people will probably build a Deathfire Grasp on Evelyn, and that will boost the damage of Liandry's Torment's passive.
Yeah, it'll proc it. Because it's spell damage,
So yeah, it'll deal more magic damage because of Deathfire Grasp. So yeah, I could definitely see building this on Evelyn.
Yeah. So that's Liandry's Torment. I expect to see it in Season 3. We already have a little bit in the preseason, but I would expect to see much, much more of it later on down the line. Be looking out for Liandry's Torment and give it a try. Play with it on different champions. Let us know if you find a champion that just, like, this makes them win the game. Build Liandry's win the game because I want to play that champion.
I mean, if you have a champion that does not use mana, like Katarina, Mordekaiser, Vlad, I don't see why you don't build this probably first.
Yeah.
Maybe not with Katarina. Maybe you build Rylai's first with Katarina. But with Vlad and Mordekaiser, just build this item first and just win. Just please do it. Do it for me.
Build it and win the game. So we're going to move on. And let's talk about our CC of the week, which I've chosen Fear for this week. Fear is one of those really, really odd pieces of CC because it's one of the only pieces of CC that I know of that is completely random in its effectiveness. I mean, so when you fear someone, the whole idea is that they're going to run around aimlessly for about, however long, but it's completely random where they run. Like, they can run towards you, they can run away from you, they can kind of do a little circle where they stand and not really go anywhere. And it's one of those only ones that's completely random and you don't really have too much control over it. So some good examples of champions that fear are you have Nocturne with his chains that fear that we mentioned briefly last time in our Did You Know Fact. You have Hecarim with his ultimate. His ultimate creates this like fear area of effect when he charges in. You have Fiddlesticks who has that single target fear, which is a really good fear on Fiddlesticks, actually. And someone else that has a fear is Shaco with his little boxes. They fear. Those little jack-in-the-boxes that everybody hates so much. So, Will, what do you think of fear? Because personally, I'm really, really torn on fear if it's actually a good piece of CC.
It's really not a good piece of CC. The only benefit that it has is that it typically is on champions that are pretty good champions. So I think that people don't really realize how bad the CC itself is, just because the champions that have it, can make pretty good use of it. Yeah, it's probably the worst form of CC in the game, just by virtue of the fact that it is really hard to tell exactly what's going to happen.
Well, it's impossible because, like I said before, it's completely random. I mean, you'll fear a guy 1 second and he'll run towards you and run under your tower, and you get the kill and you're laughing hysterically. But then the next time you fear them, they can run back into their own team and then you die because, you can't chase down the guy that you're trying to fear. So, it's really impossible to control what happens with this form of CC, which does make it kind of bad. However, that being said, on a couple of these champions that we have fear on, it kind of seems to be exactly what you want. For example, I know that you think that Hecarim's fear is really, really good. I think that Fiddlesticks' fear is really good. Because, if you've ever gone up against a Fiddle in the middle, and if you have to be a pretty close range champion like a Katarina or somebody, you jump on Fiddlesticks, he fears you, and then he starts draining you, and you can do nothing. You can't attack when you're in fear, you can't flash, you can't do anything, and he just lets you run around, and he just drains you. That's kind of terrifying. Hence fear.
I get it. Again.
But so maybe on these champions, what's Hecarim's fear? Because I know that you really like that one as far as fear goes.
Hecarim's fear is basically almost like Malphite's ultimate. His I can't remember exactly what Hecarim's ultimate is called, but he charges forward, he deals damage to everything along his path, and then he deals some extra damage to the place he lands and fears everything away from him depending on where it is. So, in that respect, it is a fear that you can sort of count on in the sense that if you fear someone, they will run away from you. If you, let's say they are at your tower and you fear past them, it'll fear them more into the tower than they were before. But but it's good because it's an AoE form of crowd control that deals pretty decent damage.
It's incredibly disruptive.
If it was a stun, it would be better.
Yeah. So, where do you think fear falls then on the CC scale? We know we put stun really high up there. We put positioning CC probably the highest. Is fear really a 1? I personally think fear falls at about a 4. Because it's not great because it's random, but the champions that have it can utilize it really well. So I think it's a 4. What do you think?
Well, I mean, you have to think about it this way. Even the worst form of CC is still CC.
Yeah.
So even though I'm going to give it a 1, it's having the worst form of crowd control is still better than having nothing.
True.
So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 1 just because it's it's probably the worst form that exists. But that notwithstanding, you should still get it if you need the crowd control. If it's between let's say that your team doesn't have any crowd control at all, and it's between getting a guy with fear and getting a guy that has no crowd control, but maybe better damage or tanky or whatever, just get the crowd control. Just do it.
Yeah. And like I said, all of the champions that have fear do have a good way of utilizing it. So if you have to get fear, just know that you'll be able to do something to disrupt the enemy team with it regardless. But it probably is the worst form of CC, or close to it anyway. But that's really all I had to say about fear. Do you have anything else to say about it? Because it's just kind of there. I mean, it's very self-explanatory as far as it goes.
Well, it's nice that you can fear Vlad through his sanguine pool. That's about all I got as far as fear goes.
Yes. I love it. So let's go ahead and start wrapping up here. I do want to throw out that we do have a Did You Know fact this week. Hooray! I found a little tidbit to tell you guys about. Not that this one has any real relevance to the game itself, because nobody plays these champions anymore. But I want to talk about, did you know, Will, that Syndra and Heimerdinger have a very interesting interaction? So, for those of you that don't know what Heimerdinger does, he is the guy, the Yordle that runs around and he throws down little turrets, and his turrets deal a ton of damage, and he kills a whole bunch of minions and not much else. And Syndra is that mid that came out really, really recently, who can like throw little balls of energy around the map and like pick up minions and throw them, and is really hilarious, but doesn't really do anything either.
Yeah, I've never played or fought Syndra, and I've been playing this game since, well, I guess it doesn't really matter when I've been playing this game since, but since she's come out, I haven't seen her.
I have played against her a couple times, and well, that's how I discovered this interaction the first time, but then I played against her again using a real mid, like I think it was Katarina, and I think I wound up going like just infinite that game because Syndra could literally do nothing to me. So two champions that don't see a ton of play anymore, but they have an interesting interaction with each other. So Heimerdinger's main source of damage is that he's going to throw down these little turrets, and the turrets get bigger as time goes on, and they deal more damage, and they can eventually, like, his ultimate will slow them. And so he puts down these little turrets, and they deal a whole bunch of damage and kill a whole bunch of minions, and he's like one of the best farming champions ever because he just kills every minion ever. But that's all they really do. But the interesting thing is those turrets count as a minion. When you kill one of Heimerdinger's turrets, you get the same amount of gold that you would get for killing a lesser minion. So what Syndra can do is she can actually pick up Heimerdinger's turrets and throw them, like she would throw a minion. And you can throw them at Heimerdinger. So, here I am playing Heimerdinger for the nostalgia, and I'm putting down my turrets and being really cute, and I saw that they picked Syndra after I picked my Heimerdinger, so I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. Syndra sucks. Heimerdinger's not great either, but I'm just going to run over her with Heimerdinger. And she starts picking up my turrets and throwing them at me. And I'm just, I'm running away from my own turrets because I'm too afraid of getting smacked by them.
Wait, what were you like?
I was like, ah!
Okay, just making sure.
That is a real noise, anyway.
Sounds like you're like one of the friggin' faceless ones.
My wife definitely was wondering what was going on. She came in with a baseball bat and was like, what is going on in here? No.
I thought Cthulhu was just starting to crest into our realm.
Rising out of my computer, it's Cthulhu. But, so that's an interesting interaction. If you see someone pick Heimerdinger, pick a real mid. Don't pick Syndra. But if you really want to, for the hilarity effect, pick Syndra so that you can throw Heimerdinger's turrets and make him cry. Because he really has no other way to deal damage besides those turrets and his little missiles. So you can make Heimerdinger just weep, and you can do some pretty funny stuff. Like, say you have a Heimerdinger and a Syndra on your own team. It's like, here, I'm Heimerdinger. I'm going to put down this turret. Syndra, pick it up and throw it over there.
So you're saying that one of the worst APs counters one of the other worst APs?
I would say that, yes.
That's so sad. Let's talk about something else.
But that's our Did You Know fact, and that's the kind of stuff I want to see from you guys. Let's find some really hilarious interactions. It doesn't matter if the champions suck or if they don't really see any kind of play. Let's just find some Did You Know facts. Let's find some funny stuff that these champions do to each other, and send all of your ideas over to the First Blood Podcast at gmail.com. And, of course, we'll give you any kind of credit for anything that you guys find. But we need some help because I don't like playing bad champions, and I have to play bad champions to find these little things. So, for the most part, anyway, I have to play bad champions. So, send us your Did You Know facts. But that's pretty much going to be the show for us this time around. Will, do you have any closing thoughts on anything we talked about at all today before we go ahead and get out of here?
I remember that the last episode we had something really funny at the beginning of it, which I hope that we end up being able to splice into this episode.
Yes, we will. I'm gonna splice it onto the beginning.
Okay, good. So you can hopefully, you'll hear that at the beginning of this. So go back and listen to it again because it was pretty funny.
I'm a funny guy. Let's just put it that way. And my inability to comprehend what's going on with my life, I'm a hilarious guy. But yeah, so. I mean, my only closing thought is play more Liandry's Torment because it's awesome, and that's all I have to say about that. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us this week. As always, you can email us any kind of comments, questions, criticisms, hate mail, anything you want to firstbloodpodcast@gmail.com. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.firstbloodpodcast.com. We're always trying to spruce that up for y'all. I'm working on my abilities to create websites and everything like that, and we'll always be posting our episodes on there and any other type of stuff. We eventually want to start doing some commentaries on some games.
Yeah, we want to do some shoutcasting, man.
Yeah, maybe start putting up our own live stream like the guys over at Low Elo. Shout out to those guys because they're awesome. But, we want to start doing some awesome stuff, so keep checking the website for anything awesome that we come up with. You can follow us on Twitter at First Blood Team. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and like us on Facebook and be friends with us because we need friends. And then, just thank you guys so much for listening. As always, I am Alec, a.k.a. Eat More Chicken. I was joined by Will, a.k.a. Sinscar, and we will see you all next time on the First Blood Podcast.